Beyond the Gates spoilers tease that Dani receives an unexpected invitation from Ridge, delivered through Pamela. A small, seemingly innocuous chain of events that sets off a cascade of ambitions, betrayals, and quiet violence beneath the glossy surface of fame. The invitation is presented as a gift. Ridge, a man whose name alone can open rooms and shift trajectories, wants Dani to be the face of a new fragrance his company is launching. Pamela, who has always been 2 steps ahead in the petty, theatrical game of networking, answers the phone with a blend of disbelief and glee. Ridge's voice on the line is everything his reputation promises: measured, flattering, entirely transactional. He frames the offer as an opportunity, invoking Dani's recent surge in attention after her marriage to a younger man, as if success could be parceled and repackaged into a press release. Pamela's excitement is immediate and loud. She calls Dani, and the actress, thrilled but cautious, arrives at Pamela's place to hear the news. When Dani turns the knob and steps into the room, Pamela and Andrea are already there, 2 women who, for different reasons, orbit the same glittering prize, Dani's future. Andrea, whose presence complicates everything, is both friend and mirror. Pamela, practical and competitive, quickly suggests that Andrea could co-star in the ad. The idea is surgically pragmatic. A familiar face beside Dani's would sell not just chemistry but trustworthiness, a manufactured intimacy that plays well in 30-second cuts. Pamela pitches it as a strategic choice: a better control of optics, smoother press narratives, and, not coincidentally, a guaranteed paycheck split among people who already know how to keep a secret. Dani entertains this notion with a smile that doesn't reach her eyes. The proposal raises a thorny truth: the role calls for a man who can plausibly play her husband on camera. In the past, Dani had found substitutes, actors hired to mimic marital intimacy, but the public is hungry for authenticity, or at least the veneer of it. Pamela's suggestion to use Andrea reframes the problem. Instead of a man pretending to be Dani's spouse, why not cast Andrea in the role of confidant, lover, or complicated ally? The ad's creative brief is flexible enough to accommodate many kinds of relationships. Ridge's teams can massage the concept to fit whatever pairing promises the most press. Still, the undercurrent is clear to everyone in the room: the industry prefers tidy narratives. Dani had been thrust into the public eye because of her marriage, and now the marriage itself must be commodified to further her brand. The tension tightens when Dani deflects, saying Andrea might not be the right fit. What the campaign needs is a man whose presence suggests not just glamour but solidity. Pamela persists, pressing the point that a joint appearance with Andrea could be a fresh angle, but she knows, and Dani knows, that Andrea's casting won't recreate the specific storyline consumers expect: the picture of a young woman happily married. Pamela's mind flips through the ledger of social advantage. If Andrea stands next to Dani, headlines will focus on female friendship and empowerment, a narrative that sells cosmetics as much as it sells gossip. But Dani is thinking of something else entirely: Andre, her husband, who has never wanted the spotlight in the way she does. He had, in the past, declined to join her modeling meetings, to sign up for glossy editorials, and had even turned down a subtle invitation to enter the talent agency that represents Dani. His reluctance had been awkwardly explained as shyness, discomfort with cameras, a preference for the private over the public. Dani, hearing Ridge's proposal, feels the tiny twist of fate that might make Andre more cooperative. If he agrees to model with her, it will not just be a career boost, it will be evidence of his complicity, his willingness to stand alongside her ambition. She imagines Andre in a tailored suit, playing the ad's quiet, reliable husband, handsome, serious, benignly jealous, to anchor the narrative of a marriage that the tabloids can canonize. But there are other currents. Before this moment, Dani had tried to entice Andre into the orbit of glamour, to show him an alternative map of their life that included her world, and he had refused. Sharp, faintly wounded refusals that she still tastes like iron. This new approach, mediated by Pamela and Ridge, feels less like persuasion and more like opportunity made into obligation. If Andre refuses again, what will that mean? Is he protecting his autonomy, Or is he hiding something? Dani cannot help but remember the time she suggested Andre join her agency and he reacted with discomfort, almost panic. She wonders if his refusal then was because something about his life or a secret he harbors cannot withstand scrutiny. Pamela applies pressure with the clinical efficiency of someone used to shaping careers. She tells Dani that the offer is time-limited and that letting it slip would be an act of professional negligence. Opportunities like Ridge's don't come twice, she tells Dani, tapping her manicured finger like a metronome. She frames Andrea's participation as an enhancer, a way to make the brand campaign more marketable, to create talking points, to craft a narrative arc that publicists can run with. But Pamela senses, beneath Dani's gratitude, a different currency, emotional calculation. There is a story living in Dani's eyes now, a yearning she cannot monetize fully with a single fragrance. Dani has always wanted to be seen for herself, not only as a spouse or as the subject of tabloid curiosity. Modeling for Ridge's perfume is, in many ways, a reclamation, a chance to define her image on her own terms. That reclamation is complicated by another voice, quieter but equally potent, Andre's. He is not in the room when Ridge calls, and yet his absence proclaims itself like a third presence. Dani thinks she knows how Andre will respond, but memory has teeth. He once refused her the small, symbolic entree into her world, turning down a role as a model for her agency, and she still feels the sting. This time, though, Dani decides to plead. What begins as an earnest conversation between spouses quickly morphs into something rawer. Dani's entreaties are laced with hurt. She asks, not for his validation, but for support. She frames the ask not only as a business decision but as evidence of their unity, a public affirmation of their commitment to one another. You can help me, she says, letting vulnerability show like an exposed thread. You can do this for me. Andre listens, and the scene pulls inward. He is a man with careful boundaries, someone who prefers to keep his life contained. Dani's plea runs up against a stubborn interior that is not easily pierced by the glow of cameras. Yet there is more to his reluctance than a fear of fame. Before Dani called Ridge's invitation an opportunity, Bill, a character whose shadow lengthens across the narrative, had planted a seed of paranoia. Bill's discovery of a secret about Andre seems to have set events in motion that none of the others can see. Bill, who moves like a bad luck charm, had put someone on Andre's trail. Cameras, footsteps, and the sense of being watched became part of Andre's daily life. The audience never gets the full list of what Bill knows, only the residue. Andre's sudden paranoia, his quick glances over his shoulder, the tightness in his reply to Dani's entreaties. When Dani learns that Bill has been snooping, the knowledge lands like gravel in her shoe, annoying at first, then grinding into her steps until she limps. She wonders if Bill's interference might be the reason Andre had refused the modeling agency before. If the secret Bill found is dangerous enough, something about Andre's past or present that would crumble under the microscope of publicity, then Andre's refusal was protective rather than selfish. But if Andre refuses now, faced with Ridge's offer, or because Bill's watchers are circling tighter and the risk is too palpable, Andre's suspicion fuels an atmosphere of dread. He starts to notice small things, a car parked too long outside their building, a man who seems to loiter at the corner of the cafe where he drinks, a subtle slippage in the rhythm of his life. He tells himself he is only being cautious, that his mind is inventing shapes out of coincidence. Yet when Pamela calls about the modeling contract, the notion that someone might be watching him reasserts itself with particular force. The contract would require public appearances, photo shoots, and media events. It would place Andre directly under the kind of glare that would expose whatever Bill found. He realizes that saying yes would invite inquiry not just into his past but into the inconsistencies that Bill hides behind carefully chosen phrases. He comes to the conclusion that the only way to keep his secret safe is to refuse. But another logic is whispering in Dani's ear. What if Andre's refusal is actually a manifestation of fear not for his secret but for himself? To decline the campaign is to remain invisible in a world that values visibility. Dani wonders if Andre's fear of attention comes not from a secret but from a deeper insecurity, perhaps even an unspoken resentment of her success. She imagines him looking at the world and seeing himself as a shadow by her light, and his refusal transforms from a protective act into a selfish retreat. The question she asks herself quietly, behind closed doors, is whether Andre loves her enough to let her career flourish, or whether he will sabotage her to keep the scales balanced. This dilemma bleeds into other corners of their lives and into other people's ambitions. Vanessa, for instance, is another player in the same arena of power and image. Her sense of entitlement is hard-earned. She has clawed from the margins to the center of a casino's inner workings and wants to claim what she believes is rightfully hers. She demands parity in control and compensation, insisting she be treated as the equal she has proven herself to be. Her concerns extend specifically to Randy, an operative whose involvement is ostensibly professional but whose loyalties are part of Vanessa's currency. Vanessa believes that if she cannot oversee Randy's actions, she cannot guarantee the integrity of the enterprise she wants to run. She wants to manage the numbers, the people, and the moral compromises that make the casino a living organism. In Vanessa's calculus, knowing the truth about Randy, his mistakes, his debts, his secret vices, not maliciousness but stewardship. Joey, a man whose decisions are often the hinge on which others swing, becomes the person whom Vanessa must persuade. She asks him directly, bluntly, whether she can have greater authority in the casino, whether she can be the one to steer its fortunes. Joey's answer on the manner in which he gives it matters more than the words themselves. For Joey, the casino is not just a business but a network of human favors and quiet violence. To empower Vanessa is to shift the male-dominated balance he relies on. He tries to placate her with vague promises and bureaucratic language, committees, oversight, a seat at meetings. But these are words dressed as solutions, paper shields that do not change the underlying power dynamic. Vanessa reads the reply like a ledger and finds it insufficient. She sees in Joey's hesitation not caution but a lack of will to cut the Gordian knot. If Joey will not give her what she demands, she will be forced to use other routes, coalitions, leverage, and the sort of political maneuvering that makes people lose sleep. Vanessa's demand for parity is not merely professional. It is personal. She wants to transform the implicit inequality that has shaped how she is underestimated. She has been the woman who does the emotional labor, who smooths over men's mistakes and takes responsibility without the authority to enact meaningful change. Now she wants to be the one who decides who sits at the table. Randy, therefore, becomes symbolic. If she cannot manage him, she cannot control the narrative of the casino. Joey perceives the threat and the opportunity and his answer is calculated. He is not unkind, he simply does not want to cut the ties that bind him to others who have helped him in the past, and in his hesitation Vanessa hears the quiet betrayal of a friend who will not fight for her. The interplay between these characters, Dani, Andre, Pamela, Ridge, Bill, Vanessa, Randy, and Joey, creates a lattice of motives that is both personal and professional. Each decision is a vector that shifts the entire structure. Dani's willingness to plead with Andre reveals not only her hunger for career validation but also the fragility of the marriage that the press consumes. Andre's suspicion of being followed, his refusal to sign the modeling contract, and the shadow cast by Bill's intrusive knowledge all develop into a narrative core. What happens when a private secret meets public appetite? Pamela's manipulations and Ridge's offer show how industries capitalize on intimacy, turning marriage and intimate vow into consumable content. Vanessa's demand for power, and Joey's equivocation, show how institutions resist change, even when those most qualified to lead are right in front of them. Suspicion, in this story, is a character in itself. It mutates and spreads. Andre's unease about surveillance is not merely a plot device, it becomes an emotional contagion that infects his interactions. He begins to test people with offhand questions, to leave doors unlocked or locked depending on impulses he cannot explain. Dani reads him like a foreign language. Is he protecting a secret or protecting himself? Pamela watches the couple with the practiced detachment of someone who has to balance friendships against deals. She thinks of contracts and pages with clauses and imagines the publicity schedule, not the human cost. Ridge remains an abstract presence, an executive producing the narrative that will sell perfume, not concerned with whether the ad's love story is sincere or staged. Bill, for his part, exists at the periphery and in the center at once. He is the one who discovered whatever it is about Andre that makes public exposure dangerous. His motives are murky. Is he seeking leverage, revenge, or protection? What he has discovered could be inconsequential or catastrophic. The audience is kept in that delicious, anxious ignorance. Bill's surveillance is the threat that elevates stakes from career disappointment to potential ruin. The possibility that Andre's secret is explosive gives way to Dani's choice to press him to participate. Every camera flash could become a scalpel, opening him up under interrogation. And then there is the human calculus, Dani, who must decide whether to push Andre further into the public eye. Andre, who must choose between preserving privacy and being complicit in a narrative that will sell them both. Pamela, who must decide whether the short-term gain is worth possible collateral damage. Vanessa, who must reckon with the frustration of being told to wait. And Joey, who must either gamble on loyalty or lose it. The stakes are not merely professional, they are reputational, moral, and perhaps legal. Each character makes a choice, and each choice ripples outward. As the first act of this expanded story unfolds, the perfume campaign becomes the linchpin around which subtler conflicts revolve. Camera tests, mood boards, and press release drafts sit alongside whispered arguments, the clatter of keys at odd hours, and the small, explosive moments of domestic life where the real truth often appears. There are nights when Dani lies awake, rehearsing her speeches and wondering whether the right answer is to pressure Andre into accompaniment, or to find another man whose smile might be easier to sell but less honest. She thinks of Andrea and how Pamela had proposed her as a co-star, and the idea of feigning closeness for public consumption begins to feel like a moral hazard. The thought of pretending to be part of a narrative that misleads the public makes her stomach twist. Her hunger for recognition presses against that twisting. Andre, meanwhile, feels the world tilt. He senses the watchers more vividly as the press peaks, and Bill's presence, serial or imagined, tightens the air around him. His decisions are no longer merely private acts. They become strategic defenses. He starts to craft lies, half-truths intended to deflect attention, which in turn produce new fractures in his marriage. He hides receipts, avoids certain acquaintances, and begins to suspect everyone's motives. Paranoia is a slow film. At first it creeps, then it floods. He imagines a future where any misstep will be broadcast, every secret a headline. The modeling contract, banal in its intent to sell assent, becomes an instrument of possible exposure. Saying yes would invite cameras, saying no might confirm suspicion. He is trapped in a no-win geometry. In parallel, Vanessa's campaign for parity gathers momentum like a storm front. She starts to build alliances, not with rhetoric alone but with tangible actions. She quietly audits operations, points out discrepancies in accounts, and cultivates the loyalty of people who have been overlooked. Her insistence that she should be allowed to know about Randy's dealings is less about control and more about preventing instability. She senses that secret-keeping breeds corruption, and she wants to be the one to name it. Joey's tepid response reveals his fear of upsetting the fragile balance he presides over, and Vanessa interprets this as weakness. She begins to plan, not out of malice but out of a desire to secure the future for herself and those she believes she can protect. All of these tensions converge around the question of visibility and its consequences. The ad for Ridge's perfume is not merely a commercial, it is a prism through which the character's true colors are refracted. For Dani, it is a chance to assert herself. For Andre, a potential threat that could burn the scaffolding of his private life. For Pamela, a transaction. For Bill, a lever. For Vanessa, evidence of systemic inertia. For Joey, a test of leadership. Each responds according to their temperament and their stakes, and the result is a slow, inevitable escalation. Secrets inch toward exposure, demands sharpen into ultimatums, and alliances strain under the pressure of competing needs. The narrative enters a space where choices have consequences that are public as well as private, where an ad shoot can feel like a tribunal, and where a whispered secret in the wrong ear can become a headline that rearranges lives. The air hums with potential violence, a psychological, reputational, and possibly physical. Cameras wait. Contracts sit on tables like small, poisonous treaties. Bill moves like a storm cloud. Vanessa circles for power. Dani pleads. Andre hesitates. Pamela hawks the dream. And Joey, who could forestall the worst or catalyze it, evades a firm decision. The tension is not yet resolved, instead it coils tighter, promising that when the next move is made, it will reverberate in ways none of them can fully predict. The story refuses to tie its threads neatly at this stage, instead arranging them into a pattern that looks purposeful only from a distance. See a pattern that will demand answers, and perhaps payoffs, in the scenes yet to come.